What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another episode of reacting to your comments. And as always, the We Are Tottenham TV army, so strong in the comments and been reacting and been interacting with us all week as usual. And we've picked out some great comments that we are going to be giving our own reactions to. So what we got?
Yeah, there's been a lot of comments after a series of debates we've had on the channel over the last few days. So
pretty much the same debate every day for the past month.
But it's just more intense. But let's get into some comments. So the first one's from Bublo Will 7584. He says, Ange doesn't bring in youngsters. Didn't he sign Kinski, Dragshin, Odeberg, Gray, Tell and Bergvall? Gave Lancashire more, Austin and all the kids starts in Europe. Ange and also made Saar better. I remember him scoring the win against Man City in the Cup when he was on a great run of form.
I think a lot of the youngsters he's given minutes to, particularly in the Premier League, I wouldn't say the Europa League, but particularly in the Premier League, I think it's been forced upon him. There have been, circumstances in that where he has given some youngsters a go, but just bring the comment up again. What's he saying about the signings? Who have we signed? Kinski,
Dragshin, Odeberg, Gray, Tell and Bergvall.
Yeah, I mean, is that him or is that the club? Because, I mean, I think he would probably have wanted more kind of experienced players to come through the club first and foremost. Yeah,
but I think he also agreed with signing younger players. I think that was also part of the remit. I think it's fair to say.
The remit from the club.
Yeah, but he agreed that's what he joined. He joined knowing that would be the remit.
But I think if he had it his own way, that's not what it would be, would it?
Maybe the pendulum is maybe too extreme, but I also think he definitely would have had an hour bring in 3 young players. I think that or a younger team. That's definitely the remit since he's come in, and obviously those are players. But he hasn't even mentioned likes of Van de Ven, Doggy, Brennan, who are also in their early 20s.
Yeah,
he's also regular starters. Right, exactly, but he brings them through. I mean, not brings them through, he's starting them, and because
he's got no one else.
Because he's got no one else. Yeah, but that was his, I think, as part of his decision as well, to go with the younger team.
We definitely needed a younger team, for sure. That's no doubt about it. But in terms of what he's saying about Lancashire, Moore and Austin, I mean, maybe not more. I think more, he's made a concerted effort to bring him through because he's a special player. I give him 100% on that. But Lancashire should have had many more minutes than what he has done. I think we can both agree on that. And Brandon Austin, first of all, he's 24 years of age. He's not too much of a youngster.
He's older, I think he's 25.
Or maybe even 25. But Brandon as well has only got starts because of injuries.
Yeah, that's fair. Because obviously Forster was ill. Obviously Kinski, they signed a 21-year-old keeper. Dragshin's 22. Odeberg, he started straight away. Gray has had a lot of starts, especially when we're starting in Europa League. Tell's 19 as well. He started his first 2 games. Bergvall was also starting Europa League and is also getting a lot more starts now. So I don't know. I mean, I think he is making concerted effort to bring in young players, and he has brought young players through. And I don't think it's just luck. I think that was always the plan, to bring him through. And I think obviously it's been accelerated, but I think it was always the plan to obviously bring him through and give. They came here because they were told they were going to play.
Yeah, and look, that is true. But I just feel like the reason they're getting minutes in the Premier League is because of the injuries. I don't think it's because of, that was the plan to play them in the Premier League. I think the plan was to give them the Europa League minutes and slow burn them in over a number of years. I think the reason he's playing them in the Premier League and the reason he's getting credit for them, developing as fast as they have is mainly due to luck.
I don't know. I think he's handled them very well, and obviously he's been forced to play them in the Prem. But
yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, I know, but the way they've kind of played and the way they've adapted, I don't think you can just say is luck. I think he's helped that, and I think he's done that.
The reason why they've developed so fast is not because of the way he's brought them through. It's because of he's been forced to play them.
Disagree. I think it's the way he's brought them through is why they've come in and played so well. I think. straight away. Bergvall coming on in the Southampton game started after coming off the bench, I think, against Rangers, and he was brilliant. And then he played against Liverpool and was brilliant. That's because of how he's developed him.
But that's also the quality of the player. I know he had up and down start to life at Tottenham, but even in his debut against Leicester in his first game, you saw good qualities there.
Yeah, but you also saw struggles Galatasaray away. You saw like this was a player who needed time to acclimatise, and I think Ange has helped with that. I really do.
I don't disagree to a certain extent, but I also think that, look, I've said it, I just think he's got lucky with how fast the acceleration's been.
VH2JZ says, they asked who has he developed. Sim says Bergvall. Brian says that's just luck. Just effing say you hate the guy.
The reality is I don't think anyone actually hates Ange. I just feel like people think that he's a bit out of his depth. I think that's the reality. And I think I don't hate Ange. I actually like him as a person, and I like hearing him speak in the press conferences, and I'm dying for it to do well. I'm dying for myself to get proven wrong. But I just don't think I will be.
Checkmate 7345. This is in response to the Europa League video. Would you sack him for one Europa League? He says, Ten Hag won trophies at Man United. He still got fired because of the league form. No matter how much fans dress up cup runs, your form in the league is the biggest indicator of progress.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The form should be your bread and butter and should be what you're really judged on. Yes, winning a trophy is brilliant, and winning the Europa League would be, a step beyond that, because it will be, the best trophy we've won probably since the 80s, which would be unbelievable. So I think it would buy him more time, but ultimately, he's always going to be just judged on the league form. And if we start the league badly the next season, regardless of being in the Champions League, being in the cups, he'll get sacked.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think it's slightly different in Ten Hag in a sense that, I think with Ten Hag, even when they were winning games, it was still just really unconvincing, even the wins, and they would luckily get wins over the line, and that was why a lot of people weren't happy with Man United, as much as they weren't happy with the results as well. It's more like when they were winning, I don't think any Man United fan was truly convinced, apart from maybe the final when they had a really good performance against City. That was probably one of their only good performances of the season. I think Spurs, when we do win, we do usually win quite well. We do usually win quite convincingly, and for me, if we do happen to turn this season around, and as much as the league form, I don't think we're going to finish in a good league position this season. But if we can turn the season around and win a trophy, I think that would that would justify a lot of what Ange's been saying, is that the root cause of a lot of these problems have been the injuries, and without that, we can be a good team. And I think that would prove it right if he was to do that. So I think that would be a little bit of the difference. Whereas I think Ten Hag kind of winning that cup just papered over the cracks of, even in the league when they were winning, they weren't even winning that well. I think it was a bit different. Stanley Mark 3498 says, absolutely crazy statement to say that if Ange won the Europa League, you'd still sack him.
I mean, I think it depends on how else the season goes in the Premier League. Like, if you get all your players back and you're still showing these inconsistent results and poor performances on a regularity, I think as well, obviously everyone will be so happy with the Europa League win, and it will mask over a lot of how poor this season has been. That is the reality. I think the way the club will act towards winning the Europa League will be to keep him on next season, and he'll be on thin ice probably for the first 3-4 months of the season, I would say. But it's not just that. It's just like the state of the squad and how his style of play really, doesn't do the world of good in terms of keeping our players together. And I think that comes into it as well. And I don't even know if, even with the players back, if we can keep them fit, or if other players are going to keep getting injured. Everything is just up in the air at the moment.
That's fair enough. In terms of as well, I think Europa League's also a bit different when it comes to that, the case of papering over the cracks, because an FA Cup, how many games you actually have to win to win an FA Cup? 5, 6? Europa League, I think it's 15 games, I think, overall. So it does, if you win that competition, that does show somewhat of consistency if you win that whole competition over 15 games, And I think if we have to win Europa League, it's another 7 games we have to play on top right now.
How many of those 15 games are you heavy favourites for?
Yeah, but it's still a good competition. There's still a lot of good teams.
I'm not denying that, but I'm saying, how many games have we played in the Europa League so far?
8.
8, right? How many of those games were we heavy favourites for?
We're probably favourites for most, except for
I'm talking about heavy favourites. Probably all of them apart from Galatasaray.
Yeah, maybe Roma.
Even Roma, yeah, we were favourites, but not maybe heavy favourites. But, you know, it would be a bitter disappointment. I mean, it would be terrible if we would lose a lot of those, like Ferencvaros and these kind of things.
Yeah, but that's them. But I'm talking about now in the knockouts. If we were to win those games, like that would show some sort of consistency over the whole tournament.
You also can get lucky in the draw as well.
Yeah, it depends. Obviously you can, but I'm just saying it's a bit different, I think, to saying an FA Cup or a League Cup papers over the cracks compared to a Europa League. I think it's just a bit of a different case.
In terms of like quality of team that we're going to play in the Europa League to like the domestic cups, you're probably going to come up against harder teams in the domestic cup than you are in the Europa League.
Yes, I think, but yeah, because obviously Premier League there's a lot harder teams, so that's fair. I'm just saying the length of the tournament, and also you do come up against good teams, and there are a lot of good teams in the Europa League. So if you were to win that tournament, I just don't think it's the same as winning a FA Cup or League Cup, in my opinion. And I think it's probably still harder, even though the League Cup or FA Cup you could be facing harder teams. It's a shorter route to the final.
Yeah.
88 Seabass 88 says, Ben, I've been a critic of yours for a few weeks now because of all the rage has focused on Ange in or out, and I thought you were missing the bigger picture. It's obviously Ange out. I completely agree with you. But the massively underperforming players also need to be cleaned out. Son, Porro, Basuma, Sarr, etc. all out. Dysfunctional owner and leadership Levy out. Thank you for a brilliant post rant. I think it was after the Villa game. You restored my faith in you. This is bigger than the manager, but let's start getting rid of Ange. I agree. It needs to start somewhere.
So I've won someone over, have I?
Apparently,
I've restored his faith in me.
You've restored his faith.
I don't know what I said after the Villa game to say that. I think I've been pretty much saying after the Villa game what I've been saying for the past couple of weeks or months. So I'm not too sure what I've done to restore his faith. But welcome on board, my friend.
Stefanos Allen says, reminder that in mid-November, Ben gave Ange an 8 out of 10 rating for his tenure on Cowlin's channel and didn't get the hate for him. There was clear progression in stats and results, apparently. All that's happened since that game is 2 games a week in an injury crisis. You see how important fitness is and being fresh. Slots lost twice with a rotated team in recent weeks despite having a full squad. Ange has been playing with half a squad for months.
Yeah, that is true. Everything he's saying is 100% true, but what he doesn't realise is when I did that video on Cowlins, he did catch me off guard in the pub after a couple of beers prior to the Ipswich game, and after the Ipswich game, I just kind of flipped and I just looked at everything a bit differently, to be honest, even before the Ipswich game. So that's just my opinion on Ange, and I just hope he proves me wrong. That's all I can hope for. Dr.
Gerard says, I think the main criticism of Ange, which is patently clear across 2 seasons, is that he has no solution to an injury crisis. He didn't learn from last season, and it cost him this one. Even if he gets his full squad back and there is a strong end to the season, what's to say he doesn't have another injury crisis he can't solve next season or the season after?
Yeah, and that's a fair comment to make, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. He's clearly struggled with an injury crisis. I think when you have 12 injuries, in my opinion, there isn't much of a solution within that, to be honest. I think you just got to deal with that situation as best you can, and it's very, very hard to deal with that. But he had, I would say last season was different. He had a bit of a mini injury crisis kind of for 5 games, and then results kind of stabilised actually after he started getting his players back for a while. But that wasn't due to injuries. That was just we were bad.
Yeah.
But that's fair enough. But again, when we got bad, we were playing the top 5 teams. So it wasn't like we were playing nobodies. But yeah, we played very badly, and he should take responsibility for that. But I don't like. I think it's different to this season where it's just literally been injury after injury. Some of them you can't do anything about, and some of them he has to take responsibility for sure. But the sheer amount, it's hard to say. The sheer amount of injuries. How much is it all down to Ange himself when players are getting re-injured and things like that, and how much of it is just players also do get injured in any system. Look at Arsenal right now; they've got 4 injuries in their front line. Is their system also too intense? Like it's difficult to say. I'm sure there is a portion of these injuries that are down to Ange and his intensity and how we played. I have no doubt about it. I'm sure of that. But how many can you apportion to that, and how many is just in like natural injuries you will get and luck and all these different aspects? It's hard to say how you proportion it all out. And I think when you have 12 injuries or whatever it is, and 14 players out like we do, I don't know. I think it's hard to say that they're all on Ange and how he plays. I think, and that's
look. I think it'd be harsh to say that all the injuries are accounted to Ange. I think that would be harsh. But the reality is, injuries and kind of big injury crisis do follow Ange around in his career. I think that's safe to say.
Well, last season was different though. In terms of actual muscle injuries, it was really Van de Ven.
Whether it's different or not, he must be the most unlucky manager in the world.
Yeah,
because this year he's got an injury crisis. Last year we had an injury crisis. At Celtic he had an injury crisis. So I mean, like, he seems to have an injury crisis everywhere he goes.
Yeah, but again, that's too broad. Again, you can't just say, oh, it's his fault, or he can't be that unlucky. Last season, when you actually drill down to it, it was just luck for a lot of it. Apart from maybe Van de Ven, a lot of it was just luck. It wasn't to do with him overplaying players or stuff like that. It was just players picking up things that you can't avoid for a lot of those injuries last year.
So we're saying he is the unluckiest manager in the world then?
No, necessarily not. This season's different. As I said, this season is different to last season. Maybe this season you can, especially with the increased European games. We've obviously gone through in all the cups this season compared to last season when we went out early. So we've I read a stat that Kulusevski's almost played a full Premier League season already, and we're in February in terms of minutes. No, but that's by the by. I'm just saying the increased numbers.
It's not by the by because he should be managing the squad better.
That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is this season is different to last season, right? So when we're talking about comparing the injury crisis, it's very, very different. Last season was only really a mini injury crisis with a couple of players, and only one of them really you could say, if you're saying that it's down to intensity, only one of them really in Van de Ven you can say that maybe is on Ange. Like Madison picked up an ankle injury after being tackled by a Chelsea player. Like I don't know how that could be on Ange. Like the other ones, Son going on international duty, Basuma. I think Sarr picked up a back injury on international duty. I think Basuma obviously also went away on international duty as well. Like Romero obviously picked up a red card. I don't think he had a bad injury. I don't remember too many mad. I think Richarlison had some injuries, but he's always been an injury-prone player. And same with Lo Celso. He had some injuries, but he had injuries before Ange. I don't know if I would put that down just to Ange. So last season's different. This season, you can definitely say Ange has made some missteps and probably mismanaged the squad when it comes to a lot of the problems. But again, it's a bit of an unprecedented season with the increased games in Europe and all this. I think a lot of teams are struggling with it. I think out of all the European teams, I think Arsenal, City also suffering of really bad injuries during this time. They're also struggling. We're probably the worst of it, and maybe we've done the worst job of it. But we're not the only team struggling with that. No doubt about it. So I think this season is definitely very different to last season. It's not about Ange being the unluckiest manager in the world. It's all about drilling into the context and seeing what it is.
Yeah, and including this injury crisis, we looked at a graph yesterday which shows that Spurs by far do the most sprints on and off the ball, even during an injury crisis. So, I mean, he doesn't do himself any favours. That's the reality.
But that's, we want to implement an intense system. That's what it takes, and we want the players to run more than the opposition.
You're seeing players out on their feet right now, and players not getting a rest on top of doing all this sprinting.
Yeah, but that graph you saw includes the whole season, right? So it's not just the last few weeks. The last few weeks is clearly we've been different. I think that's obvious. I think if you can't see that there's been differences in how we've been playing in the last few weeks, I mean, we're clearly not doing as much running as we were, I think.
Yeah, but the injury crisis has lasted probably half of the season of what we've been going through already.
Yeah, agreed. And
that graph is across the whole of the season.
Correct.
So if the running was as dramatically less as you're talking about, then we'd be a lot lower down on that graph.
Yeah, I mean, we still run. We can't ask players not to run at all. That's every team has to run.
We still run a lot.
Yeah, we still run a lot
compared to the other teams.
Yeah, I don't know if you took just the last 2 months what that graph would look like. I don't know. We would have to isolate it. I would suggest it wouldn't look like it does. I think, but anyway,
you're looking at. We've been through it so many times, but like players like Pedro Porro, Kulusevski, Son, there has been opportunities to rest them, and we just haven't done it.
I think very few. Real says, will Sim still be saying? What, have I got the right one? Yeah. Will Sim still be saying that when we are relegated? Because I think it's a very genuine possibility. People keep saying, no, we won't get relegated. I think it's extremely possible. Then we are effed because the stadium will lose its pull ability-wise.
Nah, we're not going to get relegated, guys. We're 10 points above the relegation zone. I think if we would have lost that Brentford game, it could have been a possibility, but I think we're too far ahead now.
I agree. And I think we will get a few wins before down the end of the season anyway. We're not going to get relegated. It's just not going to happen. We could, I think, yes, if we lose every game from now to the end of the season, there's a slight possibility we might, but I don't think that's going to be the case anyway. And even if we do lose every game, which I think is highly unlikely, even in that situation, I think there's a good chance we still stay up because these bottom teams are struggling for points. Actually, if you go points per game, would they even get 10 points in terms of their trajectory right now? Because Ipswich are on 16, so what, with over half the season gone, I don't know if they even trajectory-wise they would get another 10 points, but they might do. But even if they do, I still think it'll be all right. Bruce Lee says 3747.
Bruce Lee.
A manager's core responsibility is crafting winning game plans. Even when key players are out, a good manager should be able to adjust tactics and make the most of the available talent. Ange's performance showed a clear inability to adapt his strategy or make effective substitutions at the right time. He had virtually no positive impact on the team from the sidelines. The only reason he's still in charge, and this is what worries fans, is likely the hefty termination fee Levy would have to pay. Otherwise, he'd probably have been sacked after the Villa loss. Ange was not sustainable under Levy, period.
I think he's shown an ability to adapt his strategy, but he hasn't shown an ability to successfully adapt his strategy.
I think in the current situation, it's as I've said, I think it's a near impossible situation to work your way through. And I think most managers in the situation he's in would have the similar kind of struggles. Maybe not quite as bad as we've had it, but also similarly as bad, or would also probably have lost those 2 cup games, for example, in that situation.
The cup games, yes, but a lot of the other games, no. Like, would we have been taken to extra time by Tamworth? Would we have lost to Leicester at home? Like, these kind of games, like those are big black marks against his name.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think those kind of games, even with the injury crisis, you expect Spurs. There's not going to be any sympathy for Spurs losing those games. You expect Spurs to win those games. I don't no doubt about that.
And also, it's not about the losses in Liverpool and Aston Villa. It's not about losing those games. It's about the manner in which we've lost those games. Lack of fight in both the games, completely overrun, completely open midfield. It looked like, on the eye test, a complete lack of trying by certain players, particularly some of the more senior players in the squad. That's what hurts the most. It's not the actual losses. We all know, I think we all kind of can accept, like, particularly in the injury crisis that we're going through, that we can lose to a team like Liverpool, obviously, and we can lose to a team like Aston Villa, particularly at Villa Park. But it's the manner of the defeats that hurt the most.
I think when you're playing a well-oiled Liverpool team who are at their peak fitness, full team out, 1 injury in an unbelievable moment, I think they can overwhelm you, and that's just what happened. I think they just overwhelmed us, and we couldn't deal with it. I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's anything to do with
it was more than
passion.
That,
I just don't think it was.
It was more than that, because Ange literally spoke about mixed messaging after the game, and how can mixed messaging come into it in the biggest game of your season?
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with lack of fight and lack of trying and all these different things.
It does, because it confuses the players and they don't know what they're doing.
No, but that's, again, maybe if the game plan might be muddled, that's got nothing to do with the other side of it, where you're saying they lacked fight and all these different things. That's two different issues. That's two different issues. That's not the same thing. I think I think for the first half, they tried to hold that result, and they did defend actually quite well in that first half. As much as they conceded control of the game and we were under pressure, we conceded a goal for sure, but we clearly played a low block and we're trying out for our lives to hang on. That's not how Ange wants us to play, and that's what he was critical of. But it wasn't about these players phoning it in or not trying or lacking fight or anything like that. I think they had that. They just came up against a team who also had this, probably equaled our fight, and were superior in every other department.
Well, if you want to talk about the fight, talk about the mixed messaging then. I mean, that's another blot against Ange Postecoglou. How can you have mixed messaging and the players not really knowing what the manager wants going into a game like that?
I think obviously the manager has to take responsibility for that 100%. I don't disagree with that, and if he feels like his message didn't get across, that's his fault. But I also think I understand why he was, when we got a 1-0 lead going to Anfield, why he was telling the players that they have to make sure that they make it as difficult in this game to not concede chances they did in the first leg. That's probably what the angle he was going for. I don't think he expected them to just to completely neglect any sort of willingness to go forward, and which many times we did. There was many times where we actually did win the ball high up the pitch and we were going backwards, and we were trying to protect the result instead of being a bit braver and going for it, and that's probably surprised him, and probably he didn't expect that. But that's what happened, and he has to take responsibility for the fact that he didn't make sure that they knew that we're not just going there to protect the lead. We actually have to go there and take the game to them, as well as doing the things that we did in the first leg as well.
Which is embarrassing, because he should be drilling into his team the whole week leading up to it. Whether they're on the training pitch or not, they surely be doing team meetings regularly, surely, you would think. And it's embarrassing that a manager can't get his complete ideas across when at the end of a semi-final second leg, he's sitting there saying that the players didn't really know what they were doing.
I don't think he's saying they didn't know what they were doing. I think he's just saying they weren't brave enough when off the ball, for example, to push higher up and commit a few players forward. You saw when we were counter-attacking.
About.
Correct. And again, maybe a part of it was Anfield as well. Maybe a part of it was we just shat the bed, and that's also happened to top teams when they go to that stadium. It's happened to many top teams. So I think whatever you want to say, that's just a specific scenario, and I think you can lay the blame on for why we lost, but at the end of the day, we're coming up against the best team in Europe, and I know the manner of loss was tough to take, and I know it was embarrassing, but the way the condition we entered that game in, it was going to be a miracle whatever we did to get out of that game.
Yeah, and like I say, I don't put a blot on his name for the loss. It's the manner of the defeat. Where the blots come in and where the black marks against his name come in is the losses against the teams in the relegation zones and in and around.